Hi everyone! Today I'm painting a Dalmatian named Roland on this 12-inch by 12-inch canvas, and I'm going to take you through it. So I always start out with a pencil sketch to get the composition looking correct before I put paint down. I'm also filming this guy for a TikTok, so my phone might be caught in some of these shots. If you follow my work on TikTok, this is how I capture those videos. So I'm going to start out with blending some pinks, yellows, and grays into white for the head and chest. I'm not going to worry about the spots right now, but I will when I switch to dark brown paint on my brush. Roland spots are surprisingly not a basic black color, but instead a richer purpley brown color. So I get started with a burnt umber, a bit of black, and Dioxazine Purple to get to that shade that you're seeing. A custom sky was requested for this portrait, which is one of my favorite things to get creative with. I actually planned ahead with this portrait, which is unusual for me. I usually figure out backgrounds as I go, but I felt with like a more intricate sky like this, I needed to sketch it out with different ideas and procreate first. Here's a sketch I'm basing the background off of. I was actually listening and watching RuPaul's Drag Race while brainstorming ideas, and spring was the theme of that current episode, and that actually inspired me to come up with a color palette of teal, lavender, pink, and pale yellow as the colors of Roland's sky. I also wanted him to stand out, so I wanted to avoid white clouds, which you could take away from his white fur, and the night sky just didn't have the right vibe. So anyways, that was my thought process behind the sky. Okay, I'm laying down these colors kind of messy, but the objective right now is just to see where the whole painting is going and get an underpainting on the canvas. And while that background dries, I'm going to go right back to the eyes for another round of detailing. The main goal right now is to get all the shapes looking more accurate, so I'll start outlining everything until each shape looks as close to the photo as possible. The snout had a darker, warm gray look to it, so I'm going to paint it in a bit darker so that when I come back over it with smaller marks, they stand out. I'm also not going to pay attention to smaller spots yet because I'll paint them in when I'm working with a smaller brush. The nose had a lot of working wet into wet action. I used more of a red purple to start, and I worked in light purple for the lighter areas and a brown sort of black for the shadows. I ended up starkly outlining the shape to fit in with the level of definition the eyes are at. And next I'm going to make sure that the face and the ears are shaped correctly so that when I do paint the background in again, I can make that background as finished as possible. I don't want to have to come back and color match areas in the background to cover up parts of the ear if I make the ears too long, for example. For the background, I know what main colors I'm going to use, so I pre-mix a bunch of teal, blue, lavender, pink, and yellow. That way I can work faster when it comes to blending them all together, which is what I need to achieve now. I'll add cloud texture and build up their colors later when it dries, but I just need it all blended out and smooth and as opaque as possible. Okay, now that the background has a second coat, it is time to focus and get into the detail work. I'm going to start creating the texture and really make this start to look like Roland. And I like working on one spot at a time so that I don't become overwhelmed with how much left there is to do. I love painting this part. Pure white paint creates all of these marks and they stand out because of the warm colors I previously added down before. And yeah, for some reason this kind of acrylic paint isn't its best self on the first go. I will need to go over it again to achieve a pure white, but I can use that faded white look to my advantage though, because it will look like texture and shadow. Here's like the first small spot I'm adding in. I want to keep it a blended out brown mark to start out with. Then I'll add in the deeper browns in like the center and work on the surrounding texture. The white edges on the bottom part of the spot kind of stand up taller than the actual spot, which makes it feel more like set into a snout. And yeah, really you're just filling in a dark oval with tick marks and a lighter color to get some sort of texture, make it feel more of a real looking spot. Now I'm just going to continue to fill in those little white marks everywhere I see them. I will say though, like in the end, I ended up making all of these little ticks into uniform of like a straight line across the snout. I would suggest you kind of add them in a little bit more random than I am doing right now. Like it's almost like too uniform across the bridge of the snout. And yeah, to break that up, you just kind of like do upward ticks in the little gray lines you're starting to see me make. I did end up fixing that in the end, but I just thought I would point it out now so you guys don't make the same mistake I did. So while the fur is all about little white tick marks, the nose is really all about dots, lots and lots of little dots. So I kind of start to build that up here. You'll see me kind of start out with kind of scruffy blending in the shape to kind of make it a more like a three-dimensional form first. And once that dries, I'll add in dots on top of it like you're seeing. Okay, the ears are so much fun to create. I started out with painting in the white shapes I saw first, and while that white paint is still drying, I went in and tried to blend out the edges of the white paint so that way they kind of sit in more and feel a little bit more a part of the ear. You don't want the shapes to just be so sharp and contrasted, because that kind of takes away the realistic feel of it. And yeah, so I'm just kind of taking the brown and cutting into it to create a more and more defined shape, and just building up and blending in lines. With the chest, I'm just going to continue on with the same thing you've already seen me doing, where I just keep everything like super soft and blended. Then I'll add in more saturated color into the spots, and then just work on the surrounding area to kind of like brush and feather them out to make them look more set into the fur and give a more real feel. Now I'm gonna start touching up the collar. I considered changing the color of it and really adding in maybe a sort of like pattern or design, but I do feel like the sort of blue that it actually has works with this piece. I even considered leaving out the collar entirely, but I didn't have a strong enough reference to make up for its absence. I feel like the neck would have looked really awkward without it, and also collars are a really nice personal touch to a piece too, so I do like including them when I can. Now here's where I'm gonna really finalize the way that the clouds look. I do have a reference I'm working off of to make sure I can kind of get a realistic texture to these guys. I start out with kind of like a darker shadow and then blend highlights into it to kind of create what you're seeing. I don't think acrylic paint is best for clouds. I feel like I haven't been able to achieve a super hyper realistic look to them, but honestly for my purposes I just want it to look really beautiful, more illustrated anyways, so I'm okay with the way that they're coming out right now. Of course, acrylic paint dries really fast, so I'm working on one section at a time. I still want it to look all blended and nice together. I still want the edges of the clouds to look like feathered out because, you know, that's how they look in real life. I chose bright yellows and pinks for like the highlights, and honestly like the yellow needed a ton of like coats to get like uber bright, which you will see later on. Okay, here is the last stage of all the detail work on Roland. I am going to zoom in on his eyes real quick here, and I'm also going to show you the reference I was using to get the eye color I achieved because it wasn't really shown in the main one I was using. Really like adding in a dot and a dash for the reflection and the highlights on the eyes, and really I just kind of use a watered down gray to achieve the dash, and then I'll go in and add just pure white for the dots. Now I'm going to add in another round of white tick marks. As you can see, I kind of like dried in like a warm sort of grayish look to it, and you can see how like bright it is now when I added another coat of white. And I'm just going to go in and finalize all of that texture. That's what I'm going to do right now. So as I'm going in and adding in white for another time, I'm gonna feather out the main shape a little bit into like these tiny little lines that I do see in the photo, and it does make it kind of sit a little bit nicer and more realistically on the ear. You can see like I'm making all the lines like more slanted to kind of fit like the direction of where the ear is going. And also you can really see here, like before it was pure white, or at least it seemed pure white when I was initially painting it on, but it dried like that dark. And I won't need to go over it again. It will be this pure white going forward. It just needed a second coat. This next section is just going to be me touching up all the whites. I'm just going to continue adding in more texture. I'm going to move on to underneath the chin, which was pretty cool because they stood out really, really nicely to create really clear texture. Okay, now that Roland is looking a lot more polished, I'm going to go back over and brighten up the highlights I made on the clouds. And you can kind of see like it did dry really fuzzy. Like looking at the left side of him, like those clouds look really undefined and kind of sloppy still. So I'm just going to go and touch those up again. So I really wanted Roland to fit in with his background, and I think a really good way of pulling your subject in with the background is pulling in some of the colors from the background onto the subject. So I'm adding in some of the sunset colors onto the major highlights on him, which is like the collar, the edges on the ear, etc. I always leave whiskers for the end, which can be mildly stressful because obviously you don't want to mess up because everything is basically done at this point. And you can correct it pretty quickly if you catch it. But yeah, you just got to be confident, make those marks, and just go for it. And yeah, these will be like the last major touches that I'm going to show you before the main reveal of the portrait. Okay, you ready for the big reveal? I didn't do a whole lot new off of camera. I did change the snout's texture so it looked less uniform all the way across. But yeah, I sent it to the client. She didn't have any edits for me. So yeah, here's the finished piece. I brought the clouds around the edges like so, and yeah, this is just such a fun piece to make. I'm so happy I was able to create it, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Have a great day, guys.